Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 11th of June, and well, a continuation of what we were looking at from our really nice readings. We're starting to see some fade now in the steel DOC that probably will have a minor impact on it exactly. Well, when it first broke below 13.5, you can see we ended up with sort of an inside day. Right now we have a little bit of a positive move on the futures. Not a surprise, everything's going exactly as we would expect given what we've been seeing from the readings. We do have, though, these positive extremes. Keep that in mind because as soon as we do get that transition of cyan moving back above red and or steel crossing back below it, then we will know that we're going to get something more like that retrace that it's expected. And we're reaching a point here where this kind of move, a 50% retrace coming back in here would be right in line with normal behavior. So all things being equal, this is doing exactly per plan. Don't think we can complain about it at all. From this original dip signal, boom, it's been spot on. And no disappointment there because the euro boosting itself back up here, just pretty much back into this middle range. It's actually improved quite a bit because of the concerns that the U.S. was going to weaken its monetary policy, which was going to bolster the euro, and that's what we've been seeing from that. Plus, it was pretty oversold, and we had already met all of our low retests and filled in the dip below the red line in that, so there was no problem with following that rising red DOC that we saw earlier on. Gold, having been pretty extreme, had that steel cross below, and this is kind of what I was talking about. It's not horrible from a weakness standpoint, but you can see it does give the potential for a little bit of retrace weakness. So you had both rising shorts as well as feeling of midterm and the short-term buyers in the steel, and that leveling off of the red DOC right at the 7.5 level. It's interesting because that kind of exacerbates a little bit. And that's where you get these kind of gap moves. It's cleaner in the futures, but I like showing that ETF. From a 5K standpoint, it was just beautiful. We ended up with the gold starting here early on, cyan below red, always buy, and it fluctuated a little bit for a while there, and then again, actually, I got the wrong color. Those should be gold. Change that real quick so that there's no confusion in those because that's my usual default color. And then, of course, the breakout above, when you were already above 50%, so it was an easy one at that particular point with beautiful shakeout, rising cleanly. Magenta gets over the 13.5, even when the DOC spread. We know that that isn't likely to produce much of a short situation. In fact, it's usually an opportunity to look for the next bolstering strength, particularly in this case, steel rising. In this case, well, right here, the green crosses back above it right there. And that lets you know that you're in for another ride to the upside. And boom, took it all the way, and then we got a clean DOC right at that. See the magenta faded a little lower, got right down here towards the 15, making a much more plausible run, and that produced a nice retrace, filling in all the way back to this positive extreme, all the way back there, though that one had already been filled. And earlier on, we had the ones that are, back over here from the original breakout. They had been filled in pre-market. But we ended up producing new buy configurations, even as early as right over here on the first initial move. The problem was this one didn't break out, and that caused it to fade a little bit on this rejection point right here. So when those broke through, you knew there was going to be a little bit of toughness. Still left opportunity to get out right at that level, even several bars later after it broke down a little bit, and then produced another beautiful buy configuration right towards the end of the day, right down here, down by the lows, and taking off from there. And that's what we've got in the pre-market, and we're just retesting that 29.6 level, and that leaves quite a range of algo activity though between those two ranges, so that's worth noting. But I think it's an important one to look at too, and just pointing this out from a 5K. You'll notice how the steel stays low underneath here during this entire run up. That lets you know that that power of money is flowing in pretty strong because it's not getting into a point where at any level, spiking back above red. That doesn't even happen. It briefly happened right here, That was the earliest like warning sign, but the green stayed above cyan, so you knew that was in a continuation. And then boom, kicked in right there. And of course, steel crossed here, and then it was a matter of looking. It's like, okay, am I going to get a buy signal on this crossover at the same time? Didn't quite materialize, even though a brief pop up. It traded sideways across that 50% for a little bit, and then it was clear by the time you got down to this 23% that it was going to continue. From my signal there, it's like, it's one of those unfortunate ones when you see that steel cross, you almost just, you're setting break even and just waiting to see if it's going to, fall down before it gets there. They tried to support it at the 50%, just couldn't do it, and that left room for it to break down to the lower range, which was pretty nice. But then you can see that transition change where the steel then is above, and you're in continued weakness there until you get the reset, which literally doesn't happen until all the way back over here, right as you're about to get the full breakout. The point at this one is, though, you're looking for a rising red DOC, given the previous lower dips right here that it made the new lows. And this is one of those where, like, even in this one, when I'm seeing that signal, I'm like, okay, if the steel had stayed up here above 13.5, great. But once it's dipped below, I know that I'm really not going to capture a longer run unless it does that dive. And it didn't really produce that, which is why it faded a little bit. Wasn't enough to trigger a stop or anything like that. So if you're looking at it from a longer term standpoint, and you're just in the buy, the stop would be down relative to where the reset took place down there at the 83 range, which is pretty decent. That's like 8 or 9 points. But you can see how effective that becomes, because then it turns around and produces a gain that's far greater than the exposure. In fact, even from the 50K, if you're just following that one, there's been no change in the steel coming underneath, which makes it also one of those comforting factors where you can kind of follow it. We're just now getting that transition of the steel potentially could be moving above red at that particular point. That could be significant from a downside factor, but you can see that just continues to fall. What does it have to stop right there? All the way up to the 92 range from a 50K standpoint. So this has been a fantastic trade all the way down here from the 53. So well over 50 points now. So that's fantastic. And it's been following the run all the way from the beginning. So as always, though, I'll put up any relevant charts. We will talk again later. Trade well.